That's right, a Faster PC offers the most competitive prices for computer repair in our area.
Wait a minute, technicians that know what they're doing for less than the competition?
That's right, a Faster PC can handle anything from software installs, virus, spyware, and malware, and those annoying pop-ups, to QuickBooks, Metisoft, and SoftIn support, from wireless networks to hardware networks. Computer problems?
You need a Faster PC.
Conveniently located at 7186 South US 1, Port St. Lucie, and on the web at afasterpc.com. Call 878-5978. Computer problems? You need a Faster PC.
Hey Dolphin fans, this is Sam Madison, former cornerback for your Miami Dolphins. Join me and the Miami Dolphins special teams powered by AARP Foundation and help make a difference in the South Florida community. Our special team volunteers have contributed more than 250,000 hours of volunteer work. With your help, we can do a whole lot more. Register today at dolphins.com/volunteer now or call 305-943-7900. Volunteer today.
Are you an entrepreneur or business owner along the Research Coast? Well, then you need to listen to Startup Talk from Indian River State College. Hi, I'm Tom Kindred, your host of IRSC's Startup Talk. Entrepreneurs and business owners will learn how IRSC can help start, grow, and accelerate your business.
Join us here for Startup Talk, presented by Express Printing of Port St. Lucie. Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. on WPSL, Monday mornings at 10 a.m. on WSTU.
And worldwide on WPSLTV.com.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
And by the way, folks, a very special Startup Talk this Thursday night on WPSL with the president of Indian River State College, Ed Massey, for the entire hour. Great guy. And so, anyway, join us this Thursday night for Startup Talk, the entrepreneurial effort from Indian River State College. It is 7:06 in Las Vegas, 10:06 here on the East Coast. And you're on Money Info, brought to you by Princeton Research, with Mike King in Las Vegas and Charles Moscowitz in Boston, and occasionally Gary in Connecticut when they allow outgoing calls in the state of Connecticut. Oh, hey, good morning, guys.
You got to pay extra for that.
You got to pay extra for that, yes. Oh man. Hey,
Actually, you can make all the long distance calls you want. You just can't call around in Connecticut.
That's right. That's so true.
I feel bad for him.
Well, I don't feel bad for him because I know where he lives. And that's a beautiful part of Connecticut, believe me. Hey, Mr. Charles, I've got to tell you something. Cliff is rapidly working on our WPSL TV site. Skyline Medical is off the charts for viewers. It is
unbelievable, isn't it?
It is unbelievable. And I think we're over 400. Is that right, Cliff? For that one, yeah, we're over 400 for that just that one show. So I think that is absolutely phenomenal, and that's on WPSL
I'm actually gonna,
TV.
They're doing that deal that we had. The last show that we had with the guys from Salem, Massachusetts on.
Yes.
I'm actually going up there to meet with them. I believe it's a week from today for 2 days or 3 days. And I'm going up with Tom Childers, the retired general, who is introducing them to more of the government side of the business, as we did with Andy Sealfon, and helping them along with the disaster relief and the government's, mobile hospitals. I was going to say MASH units, but
well, that's what they are. Yeah,
that's still my generation, and most millennials never saw the show, so they may not relate to that.
Yeah, but you know what? The young nurses will still call it that.
They are really moving forward with that, and I think that they're probably going to end up as using us for in-house investor relations. They don't yet, but I have a very strong feeling that they will be, based on the work that I've done with them up until now, and the fact that it's been so successful between the radio show and the proxy solicitation work that I did for them. So, I think that we have a real winner there, and I'd like to latch onto that business for certain.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you talk about great ideas. I mean, my goodness, they've got it, and and we have seen, we had minimal damage, if you want to say that. I mean, you're still talking in the millions of dollars worth of damage to the communities here. You keep going up to North Florida, and it was a bad situation, and you go to the Carolinas, and it's almost Katrina. It's unbelievable.
Tom Childers had an appointment where we were possibly going to be doing something with a private company called R.M.S, who's a defense contractor.
Oh, you bet. Yes.
And
they're huge.
Just got their power back on Thursday afternoon.
Now, this is the Harris in Melbourne?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we have a dear friend who owns a radio station up there, and they just got power, I think, midweek last week. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they got it. It's not that far away, really. And they just, were pretty much devastated up there.
It's amazing.
There wasn't a phenomenal amount of damage, but there were a lot of down trees and down power lines, and I guess Melbourne, even where it is a little older community.
Yes, it is.
And so they had a lot of above ground grid work that was just ripped apart.
Yeah, and of course, one of the teams that we play at Indian River State College is Eastern Florida State College. They, I think, just went back to school. They were a lot later than IRSC was. So, yeah, you're right. That area of the state, and then, of course, you keep going north, and it's just unbelievable.
Evidently, the further north you go, the worse it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that was supposed to come here. Had Matthew not jogged just a little to the east, we would have gotten that here. Yes, exactly.
It's the same thing. I was concerned about my mother in Boca because they were talking about, West Palm and just below West Palm.
Right.
And then it jogged once to the east before that and didn't come ashore. And then, a little bit further up, it jogged east again and missed you guys. I mean, I was watching, how absurdly they deal with the weather up here, because there's nothing else to talk about besides the weather and the changing of the leaves at this time of the year. But it was Port St. Lucie this and Port St. Lucie. I mean, you were going to be, like New Orleans was for Katrina.
Right.
I mean, it was just unbelievable. Every single time you saw one of those news breaks, it was Port St. Lucie.
Yeah.
I mean, I said something to Mike about it, 2 days before it was supposed to hit, and, it was, well, I guess we won't be doing the show next week because they're supposed to really get pounded, and you've gotten pounded by lesser storms and been off for 4 or 5 days. So anyway, all that said, we had a monster of a week last week.
Oh, good. I like good news.
We were up over 16% on the account, bringing the year-to-date from 62 to 78%. Our gains were, that's not as impressive as looking at the $10,000 option account at $16,000 and seeing it at 17.8 at the end of the week. But on the year-to-date number, 62 to 78 is a gigantic jump.
That's fair, Charles. That's just fair. We'll do better next time. Oh, my goodness.
It is a new year-to-date high for this year. And I think that takes us fairly well above. I think last year the final number was only 66 or 67%. So,
wow.
In a year where, the hedge funds are not doing as well as most people expect them to, that's pretty decent performance. And I think that the big account, the $100,000 account, is up, if I recall, close to 21%. So, but
wow.
we're just chugging along, hitting lots of singles and doubles, and every once in a while, we have a extra baser, like we did with the Virgin Atlantic going from 38 to 55 on a takeover. But we're just plugging away here and trying to manage the risk, which in this market I think is probably the most important thing that we do here.
Hey, wait a minute. Back up. Virgin Atlantic takeover. Somebody took over Virgin Atlantic?
Yeah, Alaskan Air.
Really? Are you kidding?
The deal is not,
hey, my little airline out of Alaska. I love it. Yeah.
And frankly, it wasn't my trade. It was Mike's trade. Mike was looking for it, looking for an airline to buy, and came up with the Virgin Atlantic, and we sat with it. I don't think we sat with it very long. I mean, we bought it and held it for probably five or six. No, we sold it. When they announced the deal, and the deal was at $56, I think I got $55 and low change for it, because I don't need to hold on for the last, 40 cents when I have a $17 profit in something. And then there was some talk that there might be a problem with it, and it went all the way back down, not anywhere near the 38 or 40, but it went down to, 49 or 50, and right now it's trading, I think, 53 or 54, and the deal will take place. But, again, limiting the risk. Why would I hold out for the last 60 cents when I have, $17.50 of the profit already available to me?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Ridiculous interest rates. Even at the ridiculous interest rates that the banks pay, it's still better to have the money in cash.
I'll tell you, Charles, whenever I had a chance, whether we were going to either Seattle or Vancouver or wherever on stories, we would try to get Alaskan Air. It's just an amazing airline. It really is.
It is an amazing airline. The only one that I think gets a higher rating, and when I say rating, I mean, like J.D. Power and all of the people who rate the airlines. The only one who has number one, the best rating, and number two, an unfair advantage is Hawaiian Air, because they are always the best on time, because they never have weather, basically. And everybody's always in a good mood flying around in the Hawaiian Islands. You just don't get complaints when you're flying Hawaiian Air.
Yeah,
but Alaskan Air is always in the top 2 or 3, and it's an amazing airline, considering where they go and the kind of weather problems that they have.
Yeah.
But, they're a big West Coast airline, and frankly, there aren't a lot of West Coast airlines. I remember in the 70s and 80s, the number of airlines that sprang up in Florida, Air Florida, and of course at that time we still had National Airlines and Eastern Airlines and all of those that serviced Florida, not so much outside of Florida, but the intrastate, Miami to Tampa, Miami to Pensacola, Jacksonville to Orlando to Naples. It was the number, and basically that stuff has fallen by the wayside.
Yes, it has,
because of the lack of economics involved in it, and so Alaskan Air has taken over a lot, really a lot of that West Coast corridor flight, which is everything from California all the way to where Mike is in Las Vegas.
Sure.
You know, up and down that whole 400-mile wide corridor that runs from Canada to Mexico.
You know, it's amazing.
So,
you look at that, what you say West Coast corridor in a way. Vegas is. It's still part of the West Coast when you start looking at these transportation. But, you know, the one that's totally forgotten is just north of Las Vegas, Reno. There are very few flights that go into Reno and Lake Tahoe. It's amazing, you know, the difference, because, you know, Vegas is as busy as Burbank Airport, if not busier.
Yeah.
And so, it's truly amazing.
You have to include it, because any time that you can get in a car in Los Angeles and not have it be a really long drive. I mean, what is it, 3 hours, 3.5 hours from L.A. to Las Vegas?
A little bit longer than that.
It's a minor trip from L.A. It's a minor trip from L.A. to Palm Springs.
Yes.
And so, you know, I mean, L.A. to Las Vegas is the same thing as me going from Boston to New York. Time-wise.
Yeah.
It's a 4-hour trip.
Yeah, it's 4 hours. Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, anyway, so we had a good week, and I'm a little concerned about the market here. By the way, as far as my being concerned about the market, we had yesterday the noon show, which is called the Halftime Report, which is probably one of the best of the shows on CNBC, because they're really serious traders and option guys, and they always have decent guests. It's where Carl Icahn and I can't remember his name now, the guy who's short, the HOF. Anyway, where they kind of duked it out on live TV. They had their 5th anniversary show yesterday, and they have, and they're going to do it all week this week. So yesterday's 3 guests were David Tepper. He's the guy who left New Jersey and moved his business to Florida. I think his company is Appaloosa Management, and he is, without question, one of the brightest guys around. Had Carl Icahn on, and had Jeff Gundlach, who is what they're now calling the new Bond King, now that Bill Gross has somewhat imploded and gone from PIMCO. And universally, they are concerned about the market. They are concerned about rates. They're concerned about the lack of growth, top-line growth. And all of them, while they don't say that we're in either an equity or a debt bubble, all favor a large proportion of cash and are defensive on this market. And, you know, none of them mentioned the election as the issue.
I think everybody's written off the election, Charles.
Yeah, David Tepper is usually very, very bullish, and he's a very funny guy, and he speaks really well. And somebody asked him about the election, and he said, "Well, you know, one of them is a narcissistic, self-involved asshole. Pardon me, FAA." And the other
bleep.
You're right. And the other is something similar to that. And he said, and I'm not telling you which one is which, but you know, I mean, these guys have genuine disdain for everyone in Washington. Everyone, you know, nothing positive to say about anyone in Congress or in the Senate, and certainly nobody at the top. So,
well,
kind of an interesting show.
Yeah. I would love to have seen that. That's oh my, yeah. Well, it is interesting because we've got we had Carol and I were doing I think 6 hours worth of political forums yesterday at our local St. Lucie County TV station, and it was very interesting. Only one of the congressional candidates showed up, and he's a young guy who is an Afghanistan war hero and double amputee, and interesting guy. And he's going up against this guy who has a recovery company. He goes in after disasters and stuff like that. But, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how that District 18 race, and it was very funny because I was watching MSNBC, and they were targeting key congressional races, and here we are again. We're zeroing in on this race as going to be one of the ones, 6 or 7, that they're going to be watching on election night, which I thought was very interesting. And CNBC had done a similar type of thing over the weekend, as did Bloomberg. So
yeah, well, they are the most important races this time around. It's all of the down ticket races that are the problem here. Neither one of the presidential candidates are worth anything, really. As like Tepper was saying, one's a liar and a cheat, and so's the other. But the fact of the matter is, the people that we're electing, who are the checks and balances, are probably the most important part of this election.
Mike,
that's what the coverage is about. That's what the coverage was about on the Sunday morning shows. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was people you never heard of from places that you fly over.
Yeah, I hate that terminology, but you're right. Yeah, flyover country.
Yeah.
Mike, who's your the Democratic senator who is retiring, right? I think he's retiring, right? Who's running for Senate?
Reed.
Yeah.
Reed.
Yeah, he's retiring, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, who's running in that race?
And I forgot her name, as a matter of fact. I'm sorry. It just slipped my mind.
Is she a Republican or Democrat?
A Democrat, of course.
A Democrat, of course. Why did I ask that in Nevada?
Remember,
yeah.
You got to remember something, Greg. Harry Reid had great support from Democrats and Republicans. He was down pretty hard in the polls the last time he won, and it was more serious Republicans in the Senate and on a national level that helped him a lot because they liked him a lot.
Well,
and he was one of the great crossover Democrats. And when I say crossover, I mean, working across the aisle kind of guys.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's going to be important. I mean, if you have a presidential race, it's totally worthless. I mean, your best bet is then just to look at Congress and get people that can work together. I mean, that's a concept, and get over some of this stuff that's in D.C. that's going crazy.
You know what else amazes me, Greg? I get that Yahoo News app. I know I mentioned it before, the one that the 16-year-old got paid $20 million for developing for Yahoo. And they were talking, there are people who are quoted as saying, Trump is a disaster. He's, if he gets elected, it would be, they talk about all of these problems and what a loose cannon he is. And these are international people. And it's not that I favor him. He is a loose cannon. I mean, I think his poll numbers would jump if he just shut up for 5 or 6 days in a row, and somebody would take his phone away so he couldn't tweet. But, I mean, here are international people talking about what a danger Trump is, and no mention of Assad, who bombs and chemical bombs his own people. No talk about Putin, who is, without any question, a thug and, clearly unstoppable as a dictator. And some of these guys from Central and West Africa who care absolutely nothing for their, I'll be generous and say constituents, but they don't believe that they have any. I mean, it's just amazing to me. It's kind of the opposite of what we talked about, and I remember the comment well.
Let's welcome
was
Andy Sealfon.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome aboard, Andy. Yeah, Charles was just trying to finish a sentence, and then we'll get.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I mean, it was like when everybody was talking about the Greek debt, and it was absolutely roiling the market every single day. Good news sent us up 150, bad news sent us down 250, and I remember making the comments. So, are there any international financiers or countries' treasurers who would come out and comment if the economy of the state of Rhode Island was in a shambles? Because that's about the same size as the entire economy of Greece was.
Sure.
And it's kind of the same thing. I mean, how do you eliminate all of these other guys and focus on something that, number one, you have no control over, number two, you really have no say in at all, and number three, you should keep your mouth shut about, because it's not your business. It's our business, and we get what we deserve.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well,
we have welcomed Andy Sealfon, the former president of R.M.S. Medical, who is leaving the company to become president of the United States. He's going to make his announcement right now. Go ahead, Andy. Oh,
I thought it was going to be Pence as president and Andy was vice president.
Oh, man. Oh. So, Andy, man, I'll tell you, I think we could have used you in Florida last week.
Yeah, it was a little wild down there, huh?
Yeah, a little. Yeah. Let's put it this way. I don't want to live through another Cat 4 storm again. That was a sweetie.
Yeah.
Well, it's better to live through it, Greg, than the alternative.
That's very true. Oh, man. But, it's funny. I was thinking of you, and Charles was talking a little bit about it in the first half of the show, about the whole disaster situation. Because Carolina seriously is looking at their Katrina. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a mess up there. And, and realistically, that's what we should have gotten here. And thank goodness we didn't. But so how things going at R.M.S. Medical, my friend?
We're doing well. We're, each day by day, row by row, we make our garden grow. I just returned recently from European swing. We had actually one meeting in Miami not too long ago, the Immune Nurses Society, which was excellent for us. And then I jumped over to Barcelona with the European Society of Immune Deficiency. We're presenting some of our scientific work at both of these congresses, and we're very gratified by the scientific responses, physicians and the nurses looking at the kinds of work we do and the innovations that we were offering. It was really great to meet the thought leaders and scientists and the physicians and the nurses in our space. It was very, very exciting Congress for us.
Well, Andy, tell us a little bit about what their specific thoughts were when it comes to your wonderful devices at R.M.S. Medical.
The benefit of our devices are obviously, besides being very usable during hurricanes and floods, because we are mechanically operated, so there's no batteries and obviously no connection to the mains, so power outages are not an issue. But even better than that is that these devices very much respond to what's happening inside the patient. And so for an infusion, this is the maximum, the best safety that you can get, and you get the best outcomes. And our key to fame here is that we provide everything that's needed for a great outcome for the patient. It's a systems approach, and it involves continuous improvement. So we're trying to make it better and better for the patient each time that they would use the equipment. And that whole process means that patients get a delivery of their medications without complications, without pain, without site reactions, which improves compliance. It means that the patients continue on the therapy. They have less frequent infections. They're healthier. And, of course, a healthier patient is a lower-cost patient. So doing it right is very cost-effective, and it's very happy for the patient. They have a very high quality of life. So the recognition is that is what we do. And the response is they are beginning to appreciate the need to understand infusion flow parameters in order to minimize these kind of reactions that patients will normally get if these are not well controlled. And so our process is to use our equipment, everything in the fluid path, our know-how, our education, interacting with patients and clinicians in a cycle of continuous improvement. And that result is very, very favorable for patients. So we published in Florida, we had 5 scientific posters in this area explaining how to do this and how clinicians, nurses, pharmacists can actually apply this technology on their patients for the benefit of the patient and for the benefit of the therapy.
So this was not just limited to nurses. Pharmacists could also come to
in
Miami
Florida,
group?
it's pharmacists. Yes, in Florida, it's pharmacists and nurses, primarily nurses.
Okay.
And in Europe, in Barcelona, it's everybody. It's physicians, it's nurses. They had patients there. They had everything. They had a little bit of everything in Barcelona, including some interesting food.
There you
city.
go. There you go. Well, tell us a little bit about the reaction of. I would think the pharmacist reaction to your products would be off the charts down in Miami.
It was. We were very gratified at the responses of the pharmacists. They absolutely are very interested in how to improve therapy, how to make it more tolerable for patients. We were able to speak with a number of pharmacists who are definitely approachable in terms of how do you make this better? And a lot of new ideas come out of this meeting, a lot of interaction. You know, we have, it's bi-directional. We are learning from them and incorporating that, and they are learning from us, and we incorporate that, and then together we evolve new ideas and ways to improve the therapy. And that's the whole rationale behind continuous improvement. But it's not just with the pharmacists. It has to be with nurses, with physicians, and ultimately with the patients, because they're the ones who have the most experience. These products obviously are used in the home, and most of the time the patient is alone, and there is no pharmacist, there is no nurse, there is no physician. And if there's a problem, patients got to deal with it on their own. Obviously, that places demands on the equipment as well. It has to work very reliably for home use. It has to be obvious. It has to be easy to train. And so a recognition of all of that with pharmacists, with nurses, and ultimately with patients is essential for us to put together this entire team, this entire network, to optimize treatments for patients in this area.
I know that I don't know about your area up in Brewster and that area around New York, but down here in Florida, the home health care industry, and I'm calling it an industry, is exploding right now. It seems to be just white hot here in Florida.
I think that's true worldwide.
Okay.
I mean, there is no other way. Look, hospitals care in a hospital in a conventional setting is unaffordable. And look at our economies and look at the cost of hospital care and look at what's happening with insurance and reimbursement. Frankly, you're lucky to get care at home today. It is the only way it would be affordable and sustainable. So it's essential to consider more complex therapies, more difficult therapies, and most treatments being done in the home or being able to be done in the home. So home care has taken on huge new therapies, very challenging therapies to be delivered in the home. And by and large, it is cost effective, and even more interesting, it may even be an improvement in the health care.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Andy, I know that I think this is our first show with you on our new YouTube channel, WPSL TV. Can you explain to folks the products that you have at R.M.S. Medical? We keep talking about the successes of all of them, but, don't really enumerate the products. And we keep getting new listeners all the time.
Welcome to new listeners. Fabulous. Congratulations.
Right.
Well, the R.M.S. manufactures a product called the Freedom System Syringe Infusion, and this consists of a syringe driver, which is a constant force mechanism, which applies this force to a syringe-based delivery system. And now we have syringes 60 ml and down to 20 milliliters, the volume. These systems are rather unique in a true constant pressure system, constant force system. It has a benefit of if there is a problem inside the patient, these systems respond to back pressure, which means that if the patient is not getting the delivery appropriately, if it's an intravenous, it's a blocked vein or a clot in the vein or something like that, our system immediately and automatically responds by reducing the flow rate. Your conventional electric systems will increase pressure trying to keep the flow rate, and will increase that pressure until it reaches an alarm level, and then it will shut it down. But by the time it reaches that alarm level, a lot of pressure can be applied inside the patient and could be doing a lot of damage. So the Freedom 60 has this unique benefit, which we call dynamic equilibrium, of a constant pressure. We manufacture precision flow rate tubing, which sets individual flow rates for as fast or as slow as you need to infuse. And for subcutaneous administrations, we also manufacture subcutaneous needle sets in various forms, needle sizes, and lengths to accommodate the variability among patients and to enable patients to have more than one site being infused at a time. And we actually had cleared up to, believe it or not, gasp 8 needles at one time in a patient, which is not normal, but for some specific needs may be necessary. The area of infusions that this is used at is for immune globulins. It's a very popular use of the Freedom system, And this is great because the patients can do this at home without worrying about scheduling with a hospital or an infusion center, and it saves much hassle for the patient. The alternative to our Freedom system for immunoglobulin therapy would be intravenous immunoglobulins, which can be scheduled once a month, but is also associated with a lot of side effects, systemic side effects such as headache, muscle aches, fever, chills, general malaise, kind of flu-like symptoms. And it has been found and determined that the more frequent weekly dosing at home on your own reduces those symptoms and usually eliminates them entirely. And so the quality of life is greatly improved. And this is because the immune globulin blood levels are more constant when you do it more frequently, and also the absorption from subcutaneous is slower, so you don't get as much dramatic systemic responses as you would get from putting it directly in the vein and having it go directly in the bloodstream. So there are specific advantages to this type of therapy, and for every wonderful upside, there are some downsides, and the downside is these drugs are being infused through the skin into the subcutaneous layer, usually in the abdomen or thighs or back of the arm. And if it's not done well, or the needles are not really good or ideal, you are going to get big red bumps on your skin, and it's going to be painful and itching, and you're going to have all kinds of unpleasant side effects at the surface of the skin, which can last hours or days. And that's what we minimize. That was one of the things that the pharmacists in Florida had noted, and we seem to be very well known worldwide for having outstanding subcutaneous needles. We're seeing more and more use of our subcutaneous needles for a wide range of therapies, especially in Europe. One of the new drugs that they're using in Europe for these subcutaneous needles are called high-flow, R.M.S. high-flow needles, is for a drug called apomorphine, which is used for a neurological treatment. Not used in the U.S., but very, very popular in Europe. And they've discovered our needles are ideal for this. And so all of a sudden, we're finding all new uses for these for our subcutaneous needles. So that's a quick overview of the products. We also make a suction system for airway suction, totally separate and distinct, called the Rescue Vac, and that is used by paramedics for patients who are having a difficulty breathing, maybe due to a heart attack or stroke, or could be a patient who is a drug overdose. There are a lot of reasons why you would need suctioning in the field, and this provides immediate, powerful, handheld suction to treat patients, especially for heart attack victims. This is very important because the first thing you need to do is make sure the patient is breathing in any situation. And so this allows you to clear the airway and get a patient breathing. And again, you don't need electric. If it's no power, crazy weather, disasters or anything, the Rescue Vac has a very long shelf life and will be available to use as needed whenever you need it.
Yeah, and I would think that this would be a must for every ambulance out there in the world. It's to have a piece of equipment like this that where you don't need electrical. It would be absolutely phenomenal. It's a lifesaver.
It is, and it's it's also used in the home now. It's used in hospitals for urgent therapy, where you're transporting a patient through the hospital. You're transporting from the operating room to radiology or to intensive care. And so what do you do if you need to suction a patient en route? And so hospitals are finding use. One advantage of our Rescue Vac over any other handheld suction. And we've been copied all over the world today, so there are a lot of versions of these products now. We started it, but we obviously, we've been flattered by a lot of copies. You know, they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, so we have a lot of flattery going on. But one of our advantages is that we provide a unique filter which blocks pathogens from being ejected into the air as you're doing this procedure. These can be dangerous procedures for the paramedic or the healthcare provider, in that as you suction, you create aerosolization. You blow pathogens into the air, and they're subject to being breathed in, and you can be infected. So if you are suctioning, for example, a patient with tuberculosis, if you're not careful, you can be creating a whole mist of tuberculosis pathogens that you breathe in, and you have the potential for contracting the disease.
Oh, wow.
So we have the advantage of blocking those pathogens in our system and preventing contamination. And, you know, that should be a major factor. It's interesting that not all the paramedics are fully aware of the risks that they face when they're doing these procedures. They're a little bit, they feel that they're immune to these things, but in actuality, these are known risks. The Centers for Disease Control have posted these procedures as pay attention and use equipment that is closed circuit or filtered, such as ours.
Wow. That's something I never even thought of. You know, they're working on suctioning somebody for maybe a heart attack or something like that. But if they do have something like TB or something like that, wow, that's scary thought.
Well, you know, with TB, with AIDS, with all these diseases, bird flu, Asian flu. I mean, why would you take a chance? You know, you don't know it's one thing if you're in a hospital and you know the pathology of the patient, you know what the patient has. But, you're a paramedic, you come upon a patient, drive up your ambulance and here's a patient who needs care. You don't know anything about the patient.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, now if you're out in the open, probably it's not so severe, but what if you're suctioning in a closed area like an ambulance? You're going to get a pretty high concentration of mist in something like that. And so that's where it becomes very important to consider safety protocols that are well known and should be practiced widely. We probably haven't been promoting it quite as aggressively as we need to. But this is what we do. We offer something that is unique and highly beneficial and very important. It doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but when you think of it in terms of if you infect the paramedic and he goes home and he affects his family and the kids go to school and the wife goes to work, you can see how this propagates through society. And so it's paramount that these be stopped at the source, which is what we do. So it's not always obvious how diseases progress and how they move through the population. And anything you can do to stop it, such as our full stop protection filter, absolutely needs full consideration in the healthcare system.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I never even thought of, because you figure you usually have two paramedics in the back, with the patient. And they could take that home and then, of course, spread it to the family, and then the kids spread it all over school.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And then you have an epidemic.
Yeah.
And so these things are not trivial. Again, we need to educate, make people aware of these risks, and we have ways to mitigate those risks.
Wow, that's amazing. That's the Rescue Vac, and it's RES-Q VAC, V-A-C. And we can find it all on your website, right? Which is, I presume?
Yes, www.rmsmedicalproducts.com.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's wonderful information for our new viewers out there that are watching on WPSL TV and on YouTube. But also, the reaction in Europe, I think, is because that's I know you've been focusing on that, and more distributors are coming online in both southern part of Europe and northern Europe, and it sounds like you're really growing over there.
We are, and we're exploring a lot of new countries. We're working very closely with several pharmaceutical companies. They're doing trials all over the world, which we are participating in. They have been working very closely with us. They realize the importance and the benefit of having a drug delivery system for their particular drugs. And we've been working very heavily with a number of them to optimize the treatment. And the beneficiary, of course, are the patients. They get the best results. So we're delighted to have that cooperation, and I think we present a great team, and we'll have very good results for patients. That's our primary goal. Our primary mission is to focus on the patient, and then all else will follow from that.
Andy, I think...
Can you explain the full stop protection filter?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. This is a solid-state device that has what is called a tortuous path, so that air can move through it fairly freely, but pathogens get trapped within its matrix. It also contains a material internally that when water or fluids hit it, swell and totally seal off the fluid, so that if you're suctioning a patient and there's fluid contamination from stomach contents and whatnot, and the container is being filled all the way, nothing can get past that filter, so no pathogens can get past it, but at the same time, even when the container is full, no fluids can get past it either. The device will just seal off, totally protecting the medic or the operator from contamination. So it's a very clever device. It can be used in any position. It's not position sensitive, and it fully protects against most of the major diseases that we know of.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. Mike, any other questions for Andy?
That's a phenomenal product. Two phenomenal products. And
yeah.
Needles.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about the needles, Andy, did you think, I know you've been on the show for so many years, but did you think that the new needles would take off on their own the way they have?
I was hoping that they would. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, obviously, yes.
But what the biggest shock I have with our needles is that when I'm told by patients that that other needles are not sharp and that hurt when they go in, that they're bent or damaged in some way, because I assumed that all needles would be sharp and all needles in that regard would be the same. And what I was told by patients was not so. Our needle quality, the tip, has high integrity. We go to a lot of pains to make sure that needle is absolutely undamaged and very, very sharp. And so it goes into the skin with very little damage and very little pain. And if it's done right, with no pain. And so the shock to me was I didn't know that would be the distinguishing feature. That's one of the features. Our needles also have a very high flow capacity at low pressure, and this is very important because you don't want to put a lot of pressure into the human body, but you want a certain rate, and that's possible with our design. We have very high flow needles, which is why we call them R.M.S. high flow needles. So between the design, the consistency, the repeatability, and a darn sharp needle tip, that's very much appreciated by patients who have to routinely put these needles into their bodies weekly, and that's a big deal. And being able to depend on that sharpness for patients is very important.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Boy,
great story.
It
great
is.
Product.
It is an amazing story, Mike. And I remember years ago when you brought Andy to the show, and Boy, you just think, wow, the company started back in 1980, and look how far you've come. It is truly an amazing story. Andy Sealfon, the president and CEO at R.M.S. Medical Products. And for Mike King in Las Vegas, Randy Sealfon in New York, and for Charles Moscowitz in Boston, you have a real good day. Don't forget, the Princeton Research Newsletter comes out every Sunday. Nice articles every week by Charles Moscowitz. And wow, what about those trades? We got to get Charles up a little higher than 66% up, though. You know, it's unbelievable. This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world, WPSL TV on YouTube.